Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth their time and bandwidth.
Today's game is Kuon. Back before Dark Souls, Fromsoft released a single survivor horror game on the PS2, and it's now one of the most expensive games to buy ever. So is it worth the money? Let's find out. Kuon, as mentioned, is a PS2 game released back in 2004, made by Fromsoft, particularly the guy who produced the Kingsfield games, and draws a lot of inspiration from both Resident Evil and Silent Hill, while also doing its own thing. The story is set during the high-end period of Japan, which is around 900 AD, in a large mansion in Kyoto. This mansion's lord, Fujiwara, has disappeared, and the mansion seems overrun by demons that the exorcist Domon seems to be doing basically nothing about. The game actually has two protagonists, each of which have two different routes similar to Resident Evil 2, called the Yin and Yang phase. The first is Utsuki, daughter of the exorcist Domon, whose sickly sister, Kuriha, has disappeared, and she wants to find out how her father is involved in this whole mess. The other character is Sakuya, a disciple of Domon, who arrives with a group of exorcists to try and figure out what's going on. Each phase covers basically half of the full story, with the first part of each being almost identical, while the second half diverges. After beating it with both characters, you unlock the Kuon phase, which is the final chapter with a new character, and it all resolves. I don't want to spoil the story because the mystery is one of the best parts of the game, often discovered by snippets in diaries, bloody wall scrolls, or notes that you find around the mansion. But it ties a lot into the Japanese concept of death and rebirth in some interesting and horrific ways, even delving a little into body horror during its latter portions. The gameplay itself is very classic survival horror, in that you're given a large area to explore with a bunch of locked doors, with your main goal being to find keys to those doors so you can backtrack and continue to new areas. You're thankfully given a map which helps with all that backtracking, though most of this is in the first half, and the second half of both phases is more linear. Combat is unique. You have an infinite use melee weapon, but you can also get spell cards, think ammunition, that can be used to shoot fire or ice at enemies, as well as unique summon cards that will spawn a companion to fight for you over a short period. The game also has a meditation mechanic that basically heals you for free outside of combat. Something else you have to worry about is vertigo, in that if you get spooked too hard, the screen goes wavy and you can't use spell cards until you meditate. And not much more I can say about Kuon. It draws a lot from its contemporaries in survival horror, but differs in its de-emphasized combat in lieu of strong story and atmosphere. So what do I like about Kuon? Well, as I said, I can't emphasize how fantastic this game's atmosphere is, particularly in its second half. The oppressive, dreamlike nightmare of the shadow-filled dark corridors is harrowing, and is paired with some great micro scares of seeing things move just off screen before disappearing. Additionally, the story is very engaging, even if it starts a bit slow. Once I beat that first phase, I was thoroughly invested into figuring out what exactly was going on, and the game gives just enough hints but doesn't explain stuff outright to you to let you fill in the terrifying details yourself. And lastly, I actually did like how this game mitigates health items through meditation. And as an aside, let's be real here, most classic survival horror games are really easy. Silent Hill, the later RE games, Fatal Frame, they give you tons of health items that make it almost impossible to die. Kuon circumvents this by having individual encounters be deadly, but you can heal in the in-between and just be focused on spooks, which I thought was smart. When it comes to the bad, the combat is usually this game's weakest point. While not particularly difficult, it is very bland and very clunky and is never fun to do. Additionally, this game has a lot of that Fromsoft circa 2004 jank, particularly around its UI with clunky menus, poor health indication, weird translation choices, and more. And lastly, this game really has like 4 puzzles and they're all pretty mid, to the point where I don't even know why they included puzzles in the first place. It's clear the game was more focused on exploration and atmosphere than combat and puzzles, so honestly, they probably could have just cut them all out and the game still would have been fine. As you know, rate games here on a 3-point scale, must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And while Kuon does have a myriad of flaws, if you are a survival horror enthusiast, you know what matters most is its atmosphere, and Kuon has that and in spades, even more than some of the best horror games I've played previously. It's a game few have heard of and fewer have played, probably given its insane cost, but if you aren't averse to firing up an emulator, Kuon is an excellent horror experience, far greater than the sum of its parts. Fromsoft, please remaster this game and re-release it. Seriously. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you played or even heard of Kuon, are you one of the lucky people that actually owns the $1,000 disc? Please let me know in the comments, but regardless, go out there and play this one any way that you can.